Hi, and welcome to Career Mobility with James Mcilvena for April 2025. This is a series that is designed to support, educate, and inspire anyone who's in career transition. Hi, James, how are you?
Yeah, really well. Can't believe we are already one quarter down into this year. It's amazing.
It's just amazing. It's going so quickly. And I know you've been really busy. I know you've literally just come back, not only from a trip to see our team in India, but then you've also been at the National HR Summit as well last week.
Yeah, absolutely. You always love attending those events. LHH attends a number of HR conferences throughout the year. We normally talk to Global Workforce of the Future report, which actually studies all the key trends, not just for changes when it comes to automation, changes in skills required in the workplace, but actually also talks about the changes required of leaders. And so the one you
Yeah.
mentioned, we sponsored a workshop, and I was there supporting the series of table discussions at the Directors Forum, which was really interesting, as well as catching some of the other exhibitors' presentations.
Yeah, fantastic. Did anything come up, James, that you think is kind of worth sharing? Were there any new things that people are doing in hiring, or what's happening out there?
Yeah, look, there was still a lot of discussion around those main themes, which is there's still pockets of talent scarcity. So those type of roles that are maybe newer and evolving, and they require significant skill sets where there's not that amount of skill availability in the market. So
Yeah,
that was theme number one. Still, and we just saw it in the rear its head in the election campaign this week around that classic topic of what's the right solution between hybrid and in-office working was still a significant theme. And then
yeah,
finally, if you take as a given how much change is going on at the moment, and even more given we're now entering into the brave new world of tariff wars and stock market fluctuations and what that means for businesses, what that was going to mean for leaders and how leaders needed to, at this point, we're almost 5 years after COVID now, and it's they're just leaders needing to have a whole new bag of tricks when it comes to adapting to change in the way they're going to lead. And then finally, you touched on anything new and exciting in recruitment. And so we did, or I listened to an exhibition or a keynote from one of the hotel chains in Australia that had actually done a test and learn process where they had tried inviting applications via TikTok versus
right.
applications with a traditional resume via the website. They didn't
Yeah,
switch off the traditional methods, but they were innovating and trying new things to reach different cohorts, different generations, and make the application process significantly easier for individuals. So less clicks to find what they needed and less barriers when it came to being able to apply, but still having enough information to make a decision or take people to the next steps.
yeah, fantastic. Well, I mean, I guess the younger generations, I mean, they're using TikTok avidly. And yeah, I guess they like to talk to camera. So, it's a brave new world out there, isn't it?
Yeah, look, it is, and I think and this has been I've been reading articles on, is a CV going to be required anymore for 15 years, and yet here we are. So
Yeah,
yeah,
true.
and you can sometimes, and it's great to hear these things. It's great to hear people testing and learning and trying new
Yeah,
things, but I think that still the reality is that there is the vast majority of application processes are still requiring the traditional methods. And yes, they've evolved the applicant tracking systems and the AI
yes.
that sits behind them and how they assess more applicants more quickly, but the fundamentals ultimately haven't changed a huge amount. But there are people heading in new directions, which is pretty cool. Hopefully, a few of these sort of take on, because I feel anything that makes it simpler and easier is a good thing. The
Yes.
one thing that will never change, though, no matter how the application process is, how specific your application is for the need and for the company, and how do you actually get that message across?
Yeah, I'm speaking to some recruiters in my network recently and hearing about, applications that they're receiving. And because things like LinkedIn now are so important, I guess, and prevalent, and show so much detail about what someone's up to if they are actually engaging on LinkedIn, and how the differences are between, they receive an application, their LinkedIn almost says one thing, but their resume is saying something else. So I know this is something that we're very hot on in career transition programs at LHH, working with the coaches and our branding specialist teams to make sure that everything does really align. But as you say, taking it further steps so that every application you're really thinking quite clearly about, does this resume truly talk to this role? Like, that would it demonstrate my knowledge for this particular application or not?
Yeah, and the two key changes that and are picking up pace are either A, pre-qualifying questions, which are sort of screen in, screen out questions, and two
Yeah.
is use of keywords in stack ranking individual applications. To the point you just made, that second one, use of keywords in stack ranking applications, a generic CV that does not link very, very clearly to the role and the role requirements will be stack ranked towards the bottom of an application pile and will unlikely to be looked at.
Yeah, this is why things like JobScan and those types of technologies have been around for a while now, became much more, widely used and known about, really, so that people could literally make sure, we talked about job titles, I know, previous to this conversation, and, job titles sometimes can look different to perhaps, what you did, but it's actually the same role, or actually is just a different name in that particular company. So yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about, some of the other things that are happening in market, but then also how you can use some of our tools to ensure that you're actually, looking at those things and considering those in applications, and sort of how you drive your job search. So one of the other things that we've seen come out, I think it was actually this week, actually, James, was the top 25 companies on LinkedIn. So I think it's the 9th annual list of companies, literally, here are the 25 companies that are doing some of the, hiring and doing some of the most exciting things really at the moment. What is your advice, James, to anybody on how to use that list when they're actually in career transition?
Yeah, I would suggest that the number one thing is it's a great start point. Like, so
Mm.
go review the list, have a think about how they've compiled that list. So they have looked at who is doing the hiring, what areas are they hiring in, and what's important to that employer. Then, if you think about those as the parameters, personalize it. So, this is a list by design, unapologetically. LinkedIn couldn't do it any other way because they're after reaching as broad a market as possible. They've
Yeah.
created a list to give you a start point of the top 25 to make it really useful and individualized. And it's exactly the same theme as making sure that your CV or any other written communication is really on point. Create your own list.
Yep.
What are based off this list? Maybe that provides inspiration on how you're going to create your own list, but create your own top 5, your own top 10 that links to your values, your interests, but equally importantly to those first two, your skill sets, where you're aware that that employer is after that particular skill set. If you have an interest in evolution of technology and automation, how it's being used to maximize customer outcomes, target those businesses, put them on your top 5. It then gives you not just a list to go after when it comes to application, but the whole point of having these type of lists is to get more proactive than waiting for application. That's where you
Yeah.
can focus some networking efforts. That's where you can focus some proactive introduction of yourself and your background efforts versus just waiting for advertised vacancies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have obviously LHH Career Studio. Anyone in career transition in our programs has access to that. And there's so many tools and things that would support this type of, research and compilation of a list like this. Something like Career Canvas, for example. How would you think they could use that, James?
So Career Canvas is, by its design, it's a AI-enabled tool which actually allows you to undertake some responses to questions around preferences, values, and then you can either have the skills from your LinkedIn profile or your CV integrated into the model, or you can actually personally tag skills against yourself into the model. It will then use AI to provide what it calls some career inspirations. The idea is that it will give you career inspirations that will say, hey, based on your preferences, here are some types of jobs you might want to consider. The idea is not, okay, bang, just go out and apply for those 6 types of jobs. It's then to be able to have a discussion with your coach, or if you're not fortunate enough to have a career transition program, have a discussion with whoever's going to be your trusted advisor throughout this process and determine which of those make sense to you. Then if you determine that there's maybe a couple of roles in those career inspirations that make sense to you, and they're not a like for like. It's not, I have been in an MD role, I'm just going to search for other MD roles. The whole idea of this is it provides some inspiration for career pivots. So if I want to change from an MD role and I want to move in and become a customer experience officer because I want to get closer to the customer and further away from general management of a business, it will give you customer experience officer as a inspiration pathway. Then look at your transferable skills against those different pathways, discuss it with the coach, and then look at, is there any learning I need to do which is going to bolster? So is that going to be proactive and upskill or reskill towards that particular role? And then final point, you referenced it before, is not just accepting that one role, then looking for like synonyms of that role. So what are other titles that I might search on that are similar, because that is an inspiring role. It sounds like me. I'm really interested in investigating this a little bit further. So that's one tool, as well as the research tools that are available. So a lot of work has gone into that Career Studio offering in order to be able to help people not just look at inspirations, but then also what to do next when they've got a target insight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd add to that, just, with your marketing plan, your game plan for networking, make sure that you've got all those details in there as well, so that you can really start to explore opportunities in those organizations. Again, until you start speaking to people, you don't really know what's happening, in those organizations. You need to be having conversations with, peers, colleagues or ex-colleagues, recruiters, if they're happy to have those conversations, talent acquisition, if you can, really anybody who you can speak to get a sense of, is there this type of opportunity in there for me, and how can I demonstrate my value and my transferable skills, really, that I've done something like this and I've learned this, and this is how I would actually see me adding value.
Look, absolutely. I mean, it's exactly how AI large language models work. It's receiving inputs from a range of different data sources and then trying to make sense of it into like one coherent approach to market. So that's exactly what you've said, and what we'd encourage people to do is, there's no wrong data source, and you might get conflicting advice or information, but then that's the uniquely you part of this process, to figure out, okay, so what does that mean for me? What advice am I going to integrate? What pathway I'm going to follow? And then add that to the support you get from a career coach or a resource like Career Studio, and that helps you make sense of everything and get on a pathway to have a clear and consistent plan to be able to figure out whether it's a new pathway you're looking to undertake through career inspirations, or whether it's a like-for-like role you're trying to chase down, just to make sure you've got the fundamentals right of job search and avoid the whole spray and pray methodology to, the more I apply to, the more likely I am to be successful, and start getting targeted, because we know through almost 500,000 transitions across our business globally every year that the more targeted you are, the more successful you are.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And I think sometimes people are a little bit almost scared to. It's a bit like the whole idea with business and niching. People are scared almost to kind of be specific. But I think, again, like you say, it just makes it so much easier for everybody to actually be part of the solution for them in market, you know, when they're networking, for their coach, for everybody in the process. And certainly for me as a connector, I can connect people to companies, but I can't connect them to industries because it's just too big.
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
And
fantastic.
and for clarity, the being specific isn't like one role at a time. The being specific is like being targeted. You
Yeah.
always have multiple opportunities bubbling
Yes.
away and making progress consistently on them. But being targeted means not just saying my goal is going to be I'm going to apply to 15 roles per day every day. It's time spent on research, time spent networking, time spent tailoring CV application, adding keywords is time really well spent. So
Yeah.
that is not time that is taking away from the maximum amount of applications you can get out. That's not beneficial. That is time really well spent increasing the hit rate of the applications you do make and being more targeted, more meaningful about applying for things that if you get through the application process and get to an interview, let's face it, because of that extra time, they're roles you actually want, not time wasting
Yes.
roles. There's no point attending an interview or attending a networking discussion for something you don't even want.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse. I mean, it really is that old analogy of sharpening the axe, isn't it? The more you sharpen the axe, the more likely you are to get through the you know, that wood quicker. It just is the way that it works. So look, that's brilliant advice. Anything else you'd like to say to wrap up today's session?
No, look, I think hopefully if there are more things, we've said this in the past, that people really want us to focus in on from a topic
Yeah,
perspective, please do comment. Let us know. We're happy to pick up specific topics. We are in market talking to both employers and that list you referenced before. You know, we work with half of the list that's in the LinkedIn top 25 employers. So we can bring to these or this series insights from all the major employers, and we can bring the insights from the 500,000 people we support in career transitions every year. And in
yeah.
the hope that it helps everyone take some nuggets away and refine what they're doing to optimize their outcomes.
Fantastic. And I'll make sure that I actually share that top 25 companies as well, along with this episode today in our LinkedIn group, so that everyone who's in transition can really kind of, you know, open that up, get a look at who's in there, and then really start thinking about who they want to target.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. All right. Well, have a fantastic rest of your day, James. Always good to see you and look forward to seeing you in May.
Thanks so much. Thanks, DJ.
All right. Cheers.